Welcome to Grant's Rock Warehouse, and tonight I want to welcome Dave Lubin to the show. We are going to take a look at the year 1981. So, Dave's here. Let's get started.
Talking bands no one talks about. Grant's Rock Warehouse.
Welcome to Grant's Rock Warehouse, and tonight I want to welcome Dave Lubin to the show. This is a topic that Dave came up with, and I went, oh, I'm totally down with this. So we're going to look at the year 1981. And the premise is 1981 was probably one of the best years in music. Of course, there are other years that have been great, but I'm not sure there was quite a year like 1981. So we're going to look at our 8 choices of tracks. Now, Dave submitted his list to me. I came up with my own, and I want to say before we start, this was difficult. But not really, because I would go through my list, I would look at records that I really enjoyed from the year, but there are so many records that I couldn't include. Can't do them all. We'd be here all night. But we've got 8 and 8. So I want to welcome Dave here tonight. Dave, how are you? Nice to see you. You ready to talk 1981?
I am, Grant. I can't wait to talk about 1981. I kind of consider this to be the last truly great year of rock music. And I think I know why that is. It was really just after the whole disco thing had kind of blown up, and AOR stations just became such a big thing that it really created this great venue and opportunity for bands that were doing great to continue doing great, bands that were on the rise to rise even higher. Mm-hmm. And then you had a number of comebacks or classic bands who came out with great albums that year. And frankly, the 8 I'm going to talk about, they're not necessarily my favorite, but they were 8 that were particularly significant in my opinion. Okay. So I'm interested to see your 8. You've already seen my 8 because some of yours might very well be, oh yeah, I would have liked to have included those, but.
Well, actually, some of your 8 I would include in my list if I could put everything all together.
Yeah.
But when I saw your list, I tried to pick things that weren't on your list, even though I love a lot of the stuff that's on your list. So we can talk about we'll go through we'll go one and one and one, and we'll go back and forth. But yeah, I'll jump in to talk about some of the things on yours. But some of the ones on mine, you might not think so much as being so great from 1981. But man, when I look at it, I'm just going, no, I have to include that. I have to include that. There was a lot. So anyway, you want to start us off? What's your
Sure. Yeah, let's start off with this one. So as I said, it was a great chance for classic bands to come back. Now, classic band that I always that I always loved. Most, if you like rock music, not too many people didn't like the Who, but they had Who's Next that came out about 1977, 78, and of course the tragedy of Keith Moon passing away happens. They continue to tour, but they do not put out a studio album until this one. Mm-hmm. So the Who are a band from the 60s, the 70s. How would they do in the 1980s? Well, the answer, darn well with this album. It had 3 big radio hits, and one of the ways I really kind of judge an album is when they still play these songs on the radio. Are they overplayed in any way in my mind? Well, the fact is that when I think about the 3 radio hits, Don't Let Go of the Coat, You Better, You Bet, mm-hmm. and of course Another Tricky Day. Mm-hmm. If any of those songs are ever played on the radio, I do not turn them off. I'll listen to them from start to finish. They're all 3 great songs, but I find the whole rest of the album is pretty good.
Yeah, I think it's...
Daltrey's vocals are very strong. It was just great to see that, hey, no Keith Moon. I actually saw them play the year before in Montreal in 1980 with Kenny Jones. They did a great show. It was a fantastic show, but it was like, let's see some new material, guys. They did it. I don't think it's their best album. I mean, it's pretty hard to top Who's Next. That was such a classic album. Tommy, of course, was their other great classic album, but it's a darn good album. I was really happy with it, and it was one of those albums I got and would just play over and over and over and over again. So start to finish.
Okay, the thing I want to add to that, which I love Face Dances. I could have picked it easily. I got this record exactly when it came out. The thing is, people, I think, expected Who's Next. They probably expected Who Are You? Because, okay, let's be honest. Who's Next, Who Are You have that similar tonality. This record doesn't have that. This record stems, to me, when I look at it, and I want to hear anything about in the comments, please let me know what you think. This record seems more like it could fit more within the quick one, and maybe the Who's sellout back in the 60s, because the songs on here are basically just pop songs. Don't let go of the coat. We're talking that. You better, you better, you bet. It's like Substitute. It's like anything in that type of era, though. Jump ahead to 1979, it's that type of song.
Well, I think what it is
That's the
they
way I look at
transitioned.
it.
I see that they just transitioned well to the 80s. Okay, so here's a little tidbit about the album. You Better You Bet was actually the first video to be repeated on MTV, and it played very well. It was by its time, it was a good video.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, it was also their last platinum album, and then just a couple other little facts about it. It reached all the way to number 4 on Billboard. So, uh, I know it kind of got mixed reviews by the critics, but the audience sure accepted it. So,
I mean, I
yeah,
like it when they're
I think
doing
it's a great
pop
album.
songs pretty much, you know? I mean, there's nothing like anything that's like on Who's Next here. It's a different record. And maybe that was because Kenny Jones joined and, his track record with the faces and the small faces may have something to do with it. I don't know. But I think Face Dances is a great record. It It's Hard is the one I have a problem with, but I have no problems with this record. I think it's a great Who record. So
Yeah, I
there
agree.
you go.
All right, what
All
you got?
right. Well, okay, this is going to be controversial, but if
Okay.
anybody knows me, and I've talked about the Knack before. I love the Knack. When the Knack came out in 79, when I was like 13 or 12, it changed my life. I was a big Knack fan, and even in 1981, when they put out the Round Trip album, which was produced by Jack Douglas, pretty much the last Knack album until they reformed because they broke up. Doug Feiger was doing a lot of drugs, doing a lot of coke, caused a lot of problems in the band. They broke up. But Round Trip, I think, is a fabulous album, the best Knack album. But at the time, the critics hated the Knack because they had success. We had that whole nuke the Knack thing that was going on. It's all crap. So they rated this very lowly. Now you look at the reviews and it gets a lot better reviews. There's not a bad track on it. It's better than But the Little Girls Understand. I look at the tracks Radiating Love, wonderful, soul kissing Africa. There's a lot more experimentation on this record, but there's still power pop here. We still have like she likes the beat, just wait and see. Just a lousy day in paradise, wonderful Knack type of material. The highlight for me is Art War, which is actually stems like from an early, they used to play this back in their club days back in Hollywood. So there's some songs on here that go back, but there's a lot of news tracks on here. I love this record. I could not mention this for a discussion in 1981. I think it sounds great. It still holds up. A lot of people don't know about this record, but anyway, I'm all about talking about these bands no one's talking about. So this is what I'm starting off with.
Yeah, I think I'm with the masses in terms of that. Like everybody, I love Get the Knack. I knew every
Hmm.
single song on the album, and then they did lose me on the next album because it was the same thing with Boston's Don't Look Back, but even more so. It just sounded way too much like the first one. It was like they just didn't. I don't know. It just sounded like a continuation. And I have to admit, I do remember when this album was released, and I just remember I had no interest in it. So that's a good one too for me to check out because you definitely have my interest there.
Well, I love this record. Always
Yeah.
have, always will. Hey, 1981, it fits right in. All
I
right.
think it went into the $2.97
Oh, as
box of
soon as
biscuits right away. Yeah, right immediately.
Dave, as soon as this thing came out, it ended up in cutout bins.
Yeah.
No one wanted it, but the
No.
little girls understand it barely sold. You know, it's fine. They were doomed. They were doomed. But great band, needless to say. Anyway, what's your number two?
All right, so the next one. So this band did, I talked about how like different bands went through like different things happened to them during the disco era. This is the Styx during the disco era. They just kept getting more popular, and all they did is they kept up what they were doing. So they came up with this Paradise Theater album, the concept album, um, about the theater that had closed in Chicago, and it was the first of the concept albums. I know that the next concept album kind of destroyed the band internally. Actually, still thought I know you once did a show on Kilroy was here, and I actually thought it was a pretty good album myself. I thought it had some darn good songs on
That's
it. But
okay.
nevertheless,
That's okay. Yeah.
nevertheless, um, I think this one's pretty good. Um, it did very well. Yeah, just to give you an idea, it went triple platinum. Styx did what they were doing at that time. They had two top 10 songs. They had the Best of Times, and the Best of Times was also hit #1. And I got to tell you, I thought the Best of Times was a much, much better ballad than Babe was. Actually, you do your Wall Punchers song.
Yeah.
Babe would probably be on a Wall Punchers show for me. But Best of Times, that one still sticks with me. I talk about again pretty much anything that's played on this album. Um, I pretty much will listen to the whole thing. I pretty much like the standards, but I like also again, I like the deep tracks on this. I like this whole album, as I do pretty much. Actually, the other nice thing I'll mention about this album was it was a big comeback from Cornerstone. Cornerstone was just a major disappointment for me. I
Mm.
mean, after Grand Illusion and Pieces of Eight, those were albums where I thought, oh, yeah, this is fantastic, and listen to every single song on the album. Cornerstone was kind of for me all the way through, and then they came back with this and say, yeah, that's more like it.
See, I don't hear that so much. I like Cornerstone when it came out. And when I was a kid and it came out, I didn't notice anything. Maybe I could look back at now and look at it and go, yeah, that's a step down. But I did see them on Cornerstone tour in Dayton when I was a kid, and they were awesome.
I saw that actually. That is when I saw them. I saw them on the Cornerstone tour, and they played. They did. I think they opened with "Borrowed Time," which actually is my favorite song on that particular album. But
Hmm.
um, just overall, there's a lot of songs on there that I just, as I mentioned, "Babe," I didn't mind it so much when it came out, but it was one of those songs that the more you played, I just didn't want to hear it anymore. There was
Right.
others anyway. No, but talking about this one I pretty much like it all the way through. And for me, it was from in my personal taste, it was a big comeback.
All right. Cool. All right. That's a good one. Hey, I like Paradise Theater. Don't get me wrong. I like it. I might be more of a fan of Grand Illusion and Pieces of Eight, but
Oh, I am for sure.
yeah,
Absolutely.
but
Yeah,
it's fine.
absolutely.
Dennis knew what he was doing with the band. I'm not going to rag about it or it's a great record. I still play it. Hell, I've
Yeah,
been playing it since it came out.
it
So I
would be
like
about my third favorite. Between Pieces of Eight and Grand Illusion, but that would be one or two, and then this would be third.
it. All right. Another record. 1981. Ladies and gentlemen, we are 1981, and this was the biggest record for this band. This kind of, if you take Bowie and mix it with Kraftwerk, you might get this. But this is their third album. We had some lineup changes. Two of the original members left, but we're still here with Phil Oakley, and he brought in a couple of female singers, so to speak, singers. They were evidently he knew them from a club, thought that they'd be great in the band, brought them in to sing. But Phil Oakley kept the band going, and we're talking about the Human League, and I'm talking about Dare. Came out in
Mhm.
October of '81. Big single off here, Don't You Want Me? A perfect record. They were never able to produce a record quite like this again. Um, Hard Times is a great track. Seconds, the whole thing, the sound of the crowd, Open Your Heart. There's not one bad track on here. This album is a 5-star record. If you look at the rest of their whole catalog, nothing ever even comes close to this. It's Capture Lightning in a Bottle, and it must have been timing. I just don't know. They had the songs, they worked on them. The band was really getting cooperating with each other. And I don't think that really happened on the second album on Hysteria. I think that I think they had a bit of I don't know. I don't think they had the material. I think they were touring. They didn't have really enough time to write, but you cannot deny that Dare is a great record. So that's my second one for 1981. Love
Yeah,
it.
Human League definitely is a band that they start defining what the '80s sound is, and
Hmm.
what you're hearing, and that transition over. And I think about songs like "Don't You Want Me" and "Human" and things like that. And yeah, I mean, certainly I like that choice a lot,
Yeah,
especially
it's a
also,
great
and
record.
again, even just for defining the decade and the kind and the early decade and what kind of music we were hearing at
Yeah,
that time. So
yeah. There you go. That's my number two. Dave, what's next? What's your number
Okay,
two?
well, I'm going with another mainstream one, but another one of my favorite bands, definitely. They had a huge hit, and again, it's just a band. Just they kept just like Six, kept doing what they were doing. Came up with a six times platinum album, Foreigner
Oh,
Four. Um, they knocked it out of the park again. I mean, they just kept doing it right. Foreigners, actually, ironically enough, I once watched a show, and Mick Jones was not at all happy with Head Games, which I actually think is a great.
that's my
I think
favorite.
that's my favorite too. That is my favorite Foreign album. He did not like that album,
Because
and
Dave,
he wanted to.
but it's got that new wave element to it. It's kind of like a mix between 70s hard rock and AOR, but with a sprinkling of with new wave. I love it. I love it.
And it's I mean there's so many great deep tracks on that one. But anyway, sticking with this one, this was actually their first album to go number one. Um, and they went down to four members. That's part of the reason it's called Foreigner Four. So he changed exactly what you're saying. He kind of changed the music a little bit, or changed sort of he went for more sort of just a straight pop rock type of sound. But
Hmm.
it works great. He put out a great album, but I did like Head Games better, and I agree with you. That was my favorite of the first four.
Yeah. No, but I have no problem with Foreigner 4 at all.
Oh, it's a darn good
It's
album.
old. It
Yeah.
was probably their most successful record. It's
Oh, it
sold
was.
like you wouldn't believe.
Absolutely.
Jukebox Hero. And fun fact that Thomas Dolby did all the keyboards on it.
Favorite song on that one is a song called "Break It Up." That's my favorite one on the Foreigner Four. So,
Yeah, but that era just reminds me of high school, for God's sakes. But anyway, yeah, good pick. All right, this is going to be an odd one. Now we thought, well, the Knack and Human League. All right, here we go. This is an artist who was a German artist, and we definitely could put it in the category of new wave. We're talking 81, and new wave was running rampant. Um, this artist basically combined opera and I would say uh, and rock elements together. He did backgrounds for David Bowie. He really, I think, was a trained opera singer, but he never caught on over here. He was in the film Erg, A Music War, and I will never forget that because when I watched that, all those new wave bands, which had X, it had XTC in it. This artist really stood out and probably made the film for me. And talking Klaus Nomi. Very odd look guy, operatic vocals, but as a young Grant, when I saw that Erga Music War, he really just like blew me away because I really hadn't heard anything like it. And to look at him, he very, right here's well, of course, I have the album cover right here so you can see it. Um, Very striking, makeup, the hair, the outfit. It looked like he came down, dropped here from another planet. But of course, it's too odd for anybody here in the States. But Total Eclipse was included in Erg, and that's a great track. Nomi Chance, another track. Twist, Lightning Strikes, Samson and Delilah. Uh, it's just great. It's a very odd, and it's a bit of a stretch. You really have to, you know, kind of
did
get
it
into it and listen to it, but it's got a lot to offer.
did this catch on in any particular markets in the United States that
But
you're aware of, or
no,
no?
no,
Okay,
if you're thinking anything that's alternative,
right,
I mean, it's out there. But we're looking new wave. It's one of those new wave albums that's
sure.
really made an impression. And I think, a lot of critics were into this. And you just have to go on YouTube, anybody. Look up Klaus Nomi on YouTube and
Mm.
watch any videos. Look at the video where he's singing for David Bowie in the as background singer. Just incredible. You just can't help but look at the guy. He's just riveting and so weird and so odd. But I love it. I love it. I have to say I do love it. So
I
there
always
you
like I always like when from time to time I'll find like some like oddball band that most people are not too familiar with, and they're just something that you discovered that you enjoyed. This sounds like one of those things for so
Strange though, but that you ever seen Erg, a Music War, the film?
I have not, no.
You need to see it. I mean, it
Okay.
covers that whole new wave scene. Blasters
Hmm.
are in it. I mean, it's just very well, it's all concert footage from like I think 1980, 81, probably 1980, I think, because XTC was still touring and they played
Okay.
they were on it. It's just great. Highly recommend it. Anybody go out and check that out because it's a great document of that era. So there you go.
I'll put it on my watch list.
All right. There you go. All right, Dave, what's next?
All
I
right,
see your
so I
fourth
got
one.
I
All
got
right.
this shirt on today for a good reason.
Yeah, I could have picked that.
Yeah. All right. So I got to talk about Rush. So they were definitely rising. Permanent Waves had certainly done well. That was their first platinum album. But this one went quadruple platinum in the United States of America. Rush had
Hmm.
arrived and broken out big time. And they did what turned out to be a darn good album. They did kind of like a nice mix here. They went a little bit more mainstream on a few songs so that they could get their radio play, but then on side two, they kind of went back to doing what Rush does with
Hmm.
Camera Eye, Witch Hunt, and Vital Signs. So it was kind of a good way for, okay, I might not want to hear all those long, drawn out rock songs that if you're a Rush fan, you like. But it's a way to really show, hey, they can do, sort of something that's more similar to pop rock and things that people can enjoy. And hey, Tom Sawyer was played on an episode of the Goldberg, so it worked well for mainstream. Um, it was now interestingly enough, Tom Sawyer was their highest charting single to that point. It hit number 44. Spirit of the Radio hit 55. Here's a little tidbit about Rush. They only, despite the fact they had a number of top 10 albums on Billboard, they only had one top 40 hit. New World Man hit 21. That was it. But however, Limelight and Tom Sawyer still played a lot on rock radio. And another one of those albums, I can listen to the whole thing. I like listening to, sort of the more, let's call it modern of that time Rush. But then I like listening to side two, which is the more traditional Rush for the more traditional fan like myself who, loved albums like 2112 and
Yeah.
what that had to offer. So
So you're saying that New World Man actually charted, and I think everybody thinks that Tom Sawyer was like the big hit.
44.
I'll be darned.
Yeah, that was a big AOR hit, but in terms of mainstream radio, no, the 44 was, and it's been like I said, Spirit of the Radio hit 55.
Hmm.
Spirit of the Radio actually to me is a little bit more poppy sounding than Tom Sawyer even.
Hmm.
I
Yeah,
don't
I
know if you
see
would agree
that.
with that. Yeah.
Well, I like Permanent Waves better than Moving Pictures, but
Yeah, I do as well, but I think this one's darn good.
oh, I
I
think
I I, I,
oh, I'm with you.
I
Oh,
still
I'm
like
with
I
you.
like 2112 the best. I mean the side one of 2112 that's just like that's just awesome stuff.
Yeah. Moving Permanent Waves is my favorite. Then probably Hemispheres. We could go on a whole Rush tangent, but no, I have not. There's nothing wrong with Moving Pictures. Everybody, that's everyone's favorite. So. But talking about everyone's favorite, this is a band that some people like this, some people don't like this. Some people don't like this trilogy of albums that came out in the 80s. Some people think it's brilliant. I'm one of the ones that think this is brilliant, and it's my favorite from this band. So we're talking the 1981 album from King Crimson, Discipline. So you've got Tony Levin, Bill Bruford, Robert Fripp, and Adrian Belew. And I think this era is wonderful. Some people like that John Wetton era. Some people like, in the Court of the Crimson King. I like all that stuff. There's something about Adrian Belew in this band and what he adds. Is it the sound effects? Is it his vocals? Is it his songwriting? I don't know, but I think it's a combination of everybody in the band. Now, in this period, my favorite record's Beat. Some people might think that Discipline's far better. Discipline's a little bit deeper, not quite as commercial, but anything within the trilogy of albums I'm into. And if we're talking musicians, though, you cannot deny that Adrian Belew is a guitar player, as a person that creates these soundscapes with guitars, isn't brilliant. And I think 1981, it's exactly what we needed. And the fact that Fripp brought King Crimson back, they rose out of the dead. God, what a great record. But these trilogy of records are my favorite. Like I said, it's magic with these four musicians. These four musicians sound like eight musicians to me. Um, but I'm just saying it's perfection. Me just naming tracks off of here is not going to do it. You have to listen to Discipline as an album and just soak it in because it just unleashes so much. So I guess that's what my number four. I guess that's my number four, and I'm just going to go with Discipline by King Crimson. Brilliant.
Yeah, I definitely enjoy. I definitely like King Crimson. I'm someone who I have in the Court of the Crimson King in my record collection.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, what got me to purchase that album was April Wine when they did 21st Century Schizoid Men. I wanted to hear the original, and
Yeah.
actually, then hearing the original ruined the April Wine version for me because I said, "Oh, okay."
Not for me, it didn't.
Yeah, for me, it kind of ruined it. It's like, oh, okay, this is a copy of this, and then most of the time I tend to like original versions better when I hear them. So
I like them both. I think what
yeah,
April Wine did with it, it's a guitar-based version of it.
well, they're awesome guitarists. Well, both
Yeah,
these
they
bands,
can
yeah.
pull
What
that
they
off.
then they did with the
Guitars
yeah,
on it,
yeah.
brilliant. It's a
All right,
different thing. We're talking, 1969 or whatever. It's
sure.
more psychedelic and trippy, where the April Wine version just rocks. So
But that's what 1981 did. As I said, it opened the door for some of these bands to come back, put out an album. I mean, there was, one of the things I can keep listing you off people who had who sort of came out of nowhere and did something that year. Actually, I have on, and I'll just bring it up now on an honorable mentions list.
they'll shoot.
Gary U.S. Bonds had a hit song that year with This Little Girl. Do you remember how often that was played on the radio? Constantly.
It was
Produ-
played a
produced by
lot.
produced by Bruce Springsteen. So Bruce Springsteen brought him out of the abyss, and guy had a hit song, and I don't think he had one since like the 50s or something like that. So that was what was special
It was
about
a
that
big
year.
deal. I
Yeah.
don't think anybody plays it anymore, but at the time it was kind of a big deal. And I
Oh,
remember Casey Kasem.
yeah.
God, why am I thinking of that? But Casey Kasem introduced him when they were doing the top 40.
Mhm.
How he hadn't had a hit in years. He credited Bruce Springsteen. It was a big hit. Got Gary U.S. Bonds back out there in the public eye. It was great.
Uh-huh. It was a great story. But anyway, that's so yeah, with King Crimson, they had an album, and you can list a number of other folks who did kind of similar type things. So
Yeah.
and I'll throw another name who had like his first big hit in years that year was from me being from Montreal was Gino Vanelli.
Yeah. Was that oh crap. What was the hit?
Um, oh boy, I should have written it down. Was it?
It
No,
wasn't
it
the
wasn't.
album where he's sitting on a
It
rock on the
was it.
by the
Was it?
water,
It hurts to
is
be
it?
in love. It was a top. He had a top 10 hit. I think it was. It hurts to be in
I
love,
think
or was
that
it
might
that
be
one?
right. I think that
Yeah,
might be it.
I think that was it. He had a couple more. That got a couple more hits out of him. So
Gino's one of those guys that he gets wrapped into that whole yacht rock movement.
yeah.
I think
Well,
he's much more than that. If you listen to some of those older Gino Vanelli albums, it's not a yacht rock, ladies and gentlemen. Uh, there's a lot there. I don't think he ever got. Well, he was probably much more popular in Canada than he was here in the States. Would you agree?
oh, absolutely. It was kind
Yeah.
of like, he had some top 10 hits in the United States, and from time to time he would just, but he would constantly put out songs that were played on the radio in Canada. So you probably had a bit of a lull in between maybe
Yeah.
I just want to stop, and we think it
That's
was
what
It
I'm
Hurts to Be in
thinking.
Love.
I just want to stop was the big yacht rock, quote
Oh yeah, for
unquote.
sure. Well, that's a crooner song. That's a
Yeah.
total crooner song. And so is It Hurts to Be in Love. I mean, that's what those were. But even like Gordon Lightfoot, he had three or four top tens, but he was constantly played in Canada, all one after another. So, but there'd be more, I think, bigger lulls back then.
Yeah. There you go. I like it. All right, cool.
Okay.
All right. My next pick was a debut album of a band who is still going strong today. I think they kind of had their peak. They had a guitar player who quit the band. Popularity went down, but they kept plugging away. But I think the first two albums, I'm going to say the first three albums with that classic lineup, I think's the best of the best. And we're going to talk with the debut album from Duran Duran.
Ah,
Now, I thought Rio, when I heard Rio in '82, was like one of those moments where compared to what everything else that was out at the time. When I heard Hungry Like a Wolf, there was nothing like that then. And it was like the skies parted, the waters parted. It was like one of those moments when you hear something and you go, wow, that's great. Because seriously, Hungry Like a Wolf in 82 was really different than what had been coming out. Now, at that moment, I had never heard the first album that came out in 81. The first album, I would rank this right behind Rio, uh, produced by Colin Thurston. Um, this is what you have the track Girls on Film is on here. Another track, Planet Earth, was a big hit. They had a lot of dance mixes on this album. Careless Memories is another great Duran Duran song. In fact, there's nothing weak on this record. Sound of Thunder's great, Night Boat. This is number two in the Duran Duran lineup. Rio, uh, Duran Duran, and then the Tiger album, Seven and the Ragged Tiger. Those great records. What can I say? It's not as good as Rio. It's the same producer, but they were able to hone in everything by the time they got to Rio. But this, if I listen to this, I listen to the whole thing. And Girls on Film still stands up. The reviews for this record, it's like a 4 out of 5 star album.
Yeah,
Um,
well,
I'm
yeah,
not sure.
they
Well,
shot out of a cannon. There's no
they
question
did.
about it. Yeah,
I mean, it
absolutely.
took a while for them to hit in the States. And I think we have to credit MTV and the videos because everybody, well, if you were back then, Duran Duran, they really were like one of the first bands, new wave bands from that era to actually pump a lot of money in their videos and produce beautiful videos. They were all like shot on film. They weren't just shot on videotape, shot on film. They had cinematography. They were beautifully shot. And when they put those on MTV, it just kind of started their career. But I don't know. Duran Duran, the first album, 1981, a classic.
No, I like that choice a lot. Actually, "Girls on Film" is probably my favorite Duran Duran song, I think. And yeah, I'd have to look back. I feel like they shot out of a cannon, and right away, maybe it's because they were bigger in Canada, but I felt like
Yes,
it
I
was
don't
just
know about in
one.
Canada, but
Yeah, because I felt like once I heard them, it was just like, it was one song after another, and like it was you couldn't go more than 2 hours without hearing a Duran Duran song if
mhm,
you were listening to rock radio, or even if you were listening to mainstream, pop hit radio. So. Yeah.
right. So there you go. I love this record. What can I say? 1981, Dave, is top notch so far to me.
Yeah, well, I mean, look at just what we've talked about now. Everything we've talked about has happened. I mean, we had
Hmm.
new bands that, like as you say, are still going strong today, and then you have comebacks, and you have, people getting hits that haven't had hit songs in forever. So,
Yep. All right, what you got next?
all right. So my next one, as I said, these aren't. Yeah, well, actually, this. So interesting enough, my favorite Journey album of 1981 was not Escape. It was actually this one. It was their live album. They put out a live album at the beginning of the year, Captured, and what it did was it basically gave you an opportunity to hear Journey before they were certainly a big band, but when Escape comes out, they suddenly become like this, bigger than life band. They had reached like a mountain of success that they had not reached before. But what this Journey Captured album does is it gives you some great songs that you're not going to hear so much live today from their 3 albums prior to Capture, that being Infinity, Departure, and Evolution. So you get to hear songs like Walks Like a Lady and Do You Recall and Where Were You and Feeling That Way, and you get to hear all these kinds of some of these songs that they'll play live a little bit here and there, but it's like a great collection to sort of it basically showed you what a great live band they were, and they are a great live band. I saw them in '86
Hmm.
and in Phoenix, and then they followed that up toward, let's say, in the summer of that year, they put out Escape, and then of course this thing, as we just said, it completely blows up. They get they never had a top 10 before. Well, this album hit number 3. They had their um, first number one hit with Open Arms. Um, don't Who's Crying Now, of course, was a huge hit from this one, and of course Don't Stop Believing has become this rock anthem, and then it got like this boost of energy after it was on Glee.
Hmm.
So I think the live album was actually my preference of the two, but Escape was a great album, and they got the success they so deservedly should have had. So good for
Awesome.
them.
Good
Yeah,
choice.
yeah. So I think it's just that was the year the Journey completely blew up. So, and they had two albums that I recommend both of them.
Well, talking about a band that completely blew up, this is a band that, I might not have listed this, Dave, had I not just done a show on it. Tim Derling and I just ranked the albums of
Uh,
Loverboy.
I
Now,
saw that.
all right, me going through the entire Loverboy catalog, I've learned that there's a lot of great Loverboy out there that I really hadn't really, you know, gave a fair appraisal. But I'm going to go to an album that, of course, I heard it back in the day and I loved it, but I think it still stands up. And we rated this our favorite Loverboy album, which is Get Lucky. You cannot argue with this. The amount of singles that entered the charts here in the States, Working for the Weekend, When It's Over, Lucky Ones, Take Me to the Top. This record is full of just gems. And Jump, I can't forget the other one, Jump. Reviews for this, apart, Rolling Stone, of course, doesn't really like anything here, but there's not really anything weak on here. It starts out with Working for the Weekend, and which is an anthem. You hear that cowbell, you know what it is. And back in 1981, that was like an anthem for the working man. Or if you're a kid in high school, you work the weekends, you're in high school, you have a part-time job, you work for the weekend. It's just like an anthem. And if you're talking about a record that is built for the summer, this is a summertime record. Working for the Weekend, When It's Over, Jump, Gangs in the Street, Lucky Ones. It's just catchy and it dates well. This doesn't really have that 80s sound to it. Like as we keep moving through the 80s, you get more of that gated drum sound, a lot of reverb. This doesn't really have it because we're still early in the 80s. So there are other records on that Loverboy catalog that kind of have that sound, but this does not. This one I will show does have that sound, and this I didn't rate this very high, but Get Lucky I like, so I'm throwing that into my mix. So I'm still on a Loverboy kick, Dave. Still on a Loverboy kick.
Yeah, no, I actually I like that album a lot. And actually I'm going to segue into my next album when we're talking
Okay.
about that Loverboy Get Lucky tour because I did see that Loverboy Get Lucky tour. And by the way, I was going to actually include Loverboy the first album in this group of albums that we're discussing. The problem was I discovered that even though the hits came out in 1981, in fact, the album was released in 1980. So it took a little bit of time for that album to really hit. And then they probably, I guess, they released Get Lucky towards the end of '81. But anyway,
Yeah.
that Get Lucky tour, who opened up when I went to go see it, Bryan Adams, and he was promoting this.
I'm not even planning this with you, but it's just we're just kind of going back and forth. But that's a
So
good record right there.
this is my favorite Bryan Adams record. And the funny thing is, it's not even close. I felt like, and his first two records are the ones that I really like. Now, what's interesting is that the first two Bryan Adams records sound a little bit more kind of like, and I know people keep bringing this up on your shows because I've been reading comments, but they have a
Oh
little bit more,
God.
they sound a little bit more like the Canadian band Prism. They have a
Mhm.
little bit more of a Loverboy sound to them. And then he kind of goes to more of a Bruce Springsteen type of thing and cuts like a knife. And I think that's why, and it's not that I don't like it, it's just that this one has a more unique sort of like Canadian Western rock sound of that era that I just really like, and there's a certain sound that if you appreciate bands like Trooper or Prism, it just Trooper and Prism don't even sound like that much like each other, but it's got that Vancouver rock sound for whatever reason. So that's Bryan Adams. I don't even know if he's from the West, to be honest with you, but he was. I think he became popular in the West. Um,
Yeah, I'm not sure
this
what
is
part of Canada he's from.
Yeah, I'm actually thinking. I think I actually found out that he is like actually. I think as I said, I think he got produced in the West, so like by Jim Vallance and whatnot, but
I
and,
think
and
that's
Bruce Allen. Yeah,
Bob Clearmountain, isn't it?
yeah. Well, it's actually Jim Vallance was part of this, so and actually Bruce Allen was his manager, and I think he was also the manager for Loverboy. I think there's a connection between all these bands between Loverboy. Prism, Bryan Adams, and then Bryan Adams was the one who really broke out. Anyway, this is a fantastic album. Here's a little funny note about this album. He wanted to call this album Bryan Adams Hasn't Heard of You Either. Didn't do that well. It peaked at number 118 on Billboard, but it must have gotten played on AOR stations in the United States because apparently it hit the song "Lonely Nights" hit number 3 on the Billboard Rock Tracks chart. So it must have gotten played somewhere. I know I was reading it did get played in certain parts of New York State for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And as I said, it was played all over because we have rules in Canada. You have to play so much Canadian music. So we were all very familiar with it. But anyway, he opened up the Loverboy Get Lucky tour. And
I'll
it's
be
a great
damned.
album. Yeah.
What a good segue. And I will say that Cuts Like a Knife is my favorite Bryan Adams album. I played
Yeah,
that 83. I would it constantly.
I don't dislike it. It's just I just like these first two much better. I like his debut, and then this one I really like. Like this is one of those I remember playing it. I would just play the heck out of it. Actually, I mentioned Prism. Side 2 of this album has a song "Jealousy." That is a Prism song initially. So
Cool.
he wrote a lot of songs for the band Prism in his early days.
All right, cool.
And he was
Excellent.
pretty young guy when he was doing that too, because he broke out about like 18, 19 years old. So he was writing songs for them at 15 or 16 years old, that means. So pretty impressive.
All right, cool. That's a great choice. I do have that record, so I totally get it. All right, my choice for 1981 is one of my all-time favorites. Though I must say, when this album came out, did not, I was not into it at all. But my old age, well, at least in the last 30 years, maybe, I've got come to really appreciate it, and this has become my favorite. And it's funny, Dave, how time flies. You could listen to something back in 81, and then all of a sudden you'll get it later in life. And this is what happened with this record. This, I think, someone may argue with me about it, and we're not doing a ranking, but my number one Police album is Ghost in the Machine.
Oh,
This fits right in
that's a
between
fantastic
Zenyatta and
album.
Synchronicity. I think this is a better album than Synchronicity. This is when Hugh Padgham came on board, and it's a lot more experimental. It's a lot darker of a record. Uh, Sting is all into playing saxophone, and he kind of learned how to play it. So there's a lot of experimental sax on it. Some people might not like it. I don't have a problem. Stuart Copeland sounds great. There's a lot of wonderful Andy Summers textures and guitar on here. All the tracks are great. Um, the reviews for this, I think, were mostly favorable. All Music gave it 3.5. Rolling Stone ended up giving it a 4 star, which is kind of crazy, but they liked it. At least were their darlings at the time. Spirits in the Material World, what a great track to start off with. And
Mm,
everything she does, every little thing she does is magic is a nice pop song. But it's funny because it's just so experimental and out there, but then it works and it was a big hit. Invisible Sun. I don't have to go through the tracks. The whole damn thing to me is perfect. Uh, Rehumanize Yourself is a Stuart Copeland song. I love it. Andy Summers wrote Omega Man. Wonderful. It's mostly a Sting record. We always get a couple of tracks from Stuart or Andy on them, but I love the whole thing. I love the tonality of this record.
I'm
There's,
real glad. I'm real glad you picked this record because this was one of those. It was on my honorable mentions list. I said,
Mhm.
"Really, this is an honorable mention?" But think, well, I had, as you said, I kind of categorized some things. I was thinking, well, the Police's this was a huge album at the time, but their King of the Mountain record was the next one with Synchronicity. So I thought, well, that was kind of the
Yeah.
Police. But anyway, I'm real glad you picked this one because I agree. There's so many great songs on this album, and so many of them are still played today.
Because well, at least
Yeah,
this one, I know they didn't always get along. They argued, but they still all respected each other. I look at this as more of a group effort as opposed to Synchronicity, because
right.
Synchronicity just seems to me it's starting to get more in that Sting vein. And I'm not bitching about Synchronicity. I don't have a problem with it. But you look at Dream of the Blue Turtle, you can see where Sting's going,
Hmm,
you know? And I think at least on Ghost, they still sound like a band working together.
sure.
where they don't sound, to me, Synchronicity almost sounds like the Beatles' White Album to me.
Mhm.
And this still sounds more like a, maybe Revolver. Let's just say
Sure.
that we're all working together and supposed to Synchronicity where Stewart's in one room, Andy's in another room, or whatever. You know what I mean? Uh, but I dig it. I like it. So that's my next pick.
Well, great choice. Really like it.
Oh, I love it.
The next one I'm going to pick here, and I'm actually do this one more out of sadness because this might be my favorite group, and it was kind of the end of the line, and that was ELO Time. The thing
Yeah.
is, was it as good as, a New World Record
No.
or Face the Music? No, it was not. But it's pretty good. I mean, I enjoyed listening to this. It didn't do terrible. It had a number. It had a top 10 hit with Hold On Tight, and actually Hold On Tight. I actually double checked. It was top 100 of the year. Um, it was a concept album, and that was starting to become the thing back then because then Styx had their concept album, and then he put out his concept album, and it was a little bit of a silly concept, but nevertheless, the music still sounds pretty good. And frankly, it was the last album that I bought of theirs. They had a few others after that. I'm familiar with some songs on some of those
Uh,
albums, but
hmm
they only had to be they really only had one more song that after that I really thought, hey, this is a great song. The song "Stranger" is still one of my favorite ELO songs, but um, I don't know. I wanted to pay tribute to the last ELO album I bought. It wasn't not their best, but still thought it was pretty good.
I think it's a fine record. I mean, you look at such greatness, New World Record, that great, everything was pretty much great with ELO. They eventually, Jeff Lynne's so brilliant. Um, what can I say? He's still brilliant here. Yeah, you can't always achieve the heights that you had before. And I think at this point, ELO is running out of steam a bit, but still, bad ELO, this is not bad. Even bad ELO is great ELO, is what I'm trying to say.
Oh,
And this is far from bad. I'm not saying that,
it's
but
pretty good. It's
yeah,
good.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's good.
I
But
mean, we've talked about like the perfect record. To me, like if I was to pick a perfect record, New World Record for me is
mhm,
like every single song is like I can't rate those songs. There's nothing there that I don't want to
right.
listen to if it's ever played. To me, that's one of the greatest albums for me ever made. And just slightly behind it is Space the Music. Love that album. So I mean, he has two that are kind of like would rank in those perfect records. This one. I pretty do much do like everything from start to finish. I mean, I remember I used to listen to this record in the background playing Atari, and I used to enjoy it quite a
Of
bit. It had
course, of
it it,
course.
it it had like this. It actually used to work very well when playing Atari games. I do remember that.
Hey, it's a good record. I've got it. I
Yeah.
don't have any issues with it at all. But you have to look at these, rank them somewhere, I guess. But well, I think after they did Out of the Blue, I think, that was such a monumental record and so many tracks, a double record and so, elaborate. The packaging alone on the album is so elaborate. Uh, I don't know. Maybe Jeff needed a break, but he kept cranking it out.
Actually, I'm just looking at what. Yeah, it's just well, the one I have is pretty standard. It's just got the cover and then the lyrics. Nothing.
By the
And that
time they
would
got on
that.
that record, I don't think there's any more strings. It's just all keyboards.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
no really an orchestra anymore.
Uh, I, I think there was yeah, you're right. You're right. It's four people.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But that's okay.
still sounds
Great
pretty good.
songwriting. It's still great. I would have liked to have had more orchestra, but hey, it is what it is.
If you go see Jeff Lindsay LO today, you'll get the whole orchestra. I promise you. I went to see
Probably.
him. I've seen him twice in the last 5 years or so.
Yeah, I
So
might go. Well, he's going back out. One
yeah,
last tour.
yeah. One last tour. I think he's coming to Cleveland actually.
Yeah. All right. Here we go. My final one. We're going album that came out September of 81. Fourth album by this band, Akron band. We're going with Devo, new
Oh,
traditionalist. Love this record. When I was in high school and this came out, I wasn't that hip into it. Couldn't get into it. But again, kind of like Ghost in the Machine. I listen to it now and think it's absolutely beautiful. Well, it's not really beautiful. It's good. Great songs. The thing about Devo, I thought they always had the songs. And this album produces, you got Through Being Cool, Beautiful World, which is absolutely one of the best songs on the record. Love Without Anger is great. Um,
Is Girl You Want on that one?
Girl You Want on Freedom of Choice.
Okay.
Uh, Jerking Back and Forth's on here. Pity You,
Hmm.
Soft Things, Race of Doom, Love Without Anger. Enough Said. I like the whole thing. Some people like that first album, but I love everything. I think everything up until Oh No, It's Devo's all great. Shout, when they went digital and used the emulator or the Fairlight, you know, once they got rid of the analog synths, it kind of lost something. Uh, but here they still have it, and I love this record. Any of these Devo albums up until Okay, It's Devo, I'm good.
Well,
They're all very similar, you know.
well, that's a talented bunch of musicians. They came up with a really fun concept. It's always fun music. That was the best way to describe Devo. It was
Hmm.
so different from anything that we had seen. I don't know if you ever used to watch Fridays, but I remember
I
seeing
do.
Devo on
Devo with
Fridays back in the day.
Fridays.
That was fun. Yeah,
Yeah.
but yeah, well, can't go wrong with a Devo album.
No. Great.
And
Great
I
stuff.
I have to be 100% supportive of that band. But anyway.
So anyway, yeah, that's my number eight.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about the biggest breakout of the year.
All right.
This group took 9 studio albums before this album came out. They never had a top 40 song, and this one had, in fact, 4 top 40 songs. They never had a top 40 album, but this one was the number one selling album of the year,
I love it.
and it was well deserved.
Hmm.
It was because so this was one of those albums that I remember it was would be played, and it was like, wow, they had this huge. It probably was like when you discovered April Wine. There was this huge catalog that came out before, and then sure enough, I went backwards and said, okay, I got to hear more of this band. And then
Hmm.
I said, oh my God, there was like all this great music. Like, why did it take so long for them to have this? And the bottom line is, it's a fantastic album. I mean, these guys, I think they were challenged to like, we're finally going to do it. We're
Well,
finally going to get to the top of the mountain, and they just knocked it out of the park. I mean, from the very first song, "Don't Let 'Em Go," I mean, what a fantastic song that is. Then he writes a fantastic ballad, "Keep on Loving You," and then here's one, "Follow My Heart." That one, I don't think that one ever really got much play or anything, but it just continues that great song. Now, if I have one criticism of this album, is after the on side two, after the song Tough Guys, the 3 songs Out of Season, Shaking It Loose, Someone Tonight, I kind of felt like those 3 songs, they're kind of mailing it in a little bit there, and then they finish strong with "I Wish You Were Here." But if I have a criticism, it's those 3 songs on side two are they don't really they're not as strong as the rest of the album, and it's just because the whole rest of the album is so good. But nevertheless, they're a great band. And then after this band, it's like, hey, I got to listen to more of them, and finally got to see them live about 2 years ago. I finally saw them in Niagara Falls, Ontario. And the great thing is Kevin Cronin's still there,
yeah.
and he can still sing, and these guys can still play. So
See, I never saw him back in the day with Gary Richrath or anything.
no, neither did I. Well,
Um,
obviously not. I saw him two
I
years
don't know
ago.
why I didn't, because I love High Fidelity. I like the whole damn thing. I like Out of Seasons. I think I love the whole thing. We used to ride around and shoot the loop in downtown Marion, Ohio back in the day, and we would alternate between High Infidelity and Journey Escape
Hmm.
and just
Makes
shoot
sense.
the loop downtown. Open the windows, play the
Well,
2 records. So it's like in my
those,
DNA at this point, High Infidelity is.
so those were the rock albums of 1981. I mean, those guys, both of them really broke out. As I said, Journey was doing better than REO Speedwagon at the time, but both those albums were just
Yeah,
huge.
the whole story though behind High Infidelity is that Epic was going to drop them because they wanted a hit. Nine Lives didn't really do anything,
Right.
and then if we don't have a hit, you're dropped. Well, they rallied, and they had a big hit. That was like one of the
Yeah.
biggest records of the year.
It was the number one selling album of the year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they never achieved that again. But of course, how could anybody ever achieve it? And then, you hit a high level like that, and then the record wants another one. Good Trouble is a fine record, don't get me wrong, but it could never hit the levels of High Infidelity. That was just a fluke, I
They,
guess.
they had
Timing.
another they had another number one song though. Can't Fight This Feeling Anymore
Yeah,
was featured in
1985.
DM. Yeah, it definitely did. So
But yeah, I love all that stuff. So,
I got
oh,
a couple of honorable mentions.
yeah,
Can
go
I
ahead.
just okay? So just I went through to sort of look at, well, what didn't I buy? What did I buy on 45? So just for fun, I'll show you like different 45s I bought from that year, and I'll just go through these quickly.
Yeah, sure.
This is Nobody Wins by Elton John
I was gonna say it's
from his
Elton
album The
John. I
Fox.
could tell. Could tell by
Actually,
that picture
I,
sleeve.
I gotta say, I always really liked that song. So that was a really good one. Here's a fun one. The Greatest American Hero by Joey Scarborough.
Oh, I didn't know that was on Electra. I'll be damned.
Here's one neither of us mentioned that pretty probably came from a pretty good album. I do like this band a lot, but this was their first big hit. Actually, no, it would have been their second. Actually,
What
no,
is it? What is
that
that?
was the first one, but that's Hold On Loosely by 38
Oh,
Special.
38 Special. Love it.
Uh, here's a band actually I like. I don't know if you consider them a rock band or easy listening, but they had quite a few hits that I quite like. But in that year, they came up with "Take It Easy on Me." That's the Little River Band.
Yep.
That was a good one. I'm not going to go through all. Okay, here's one. Kind of surprised me. I didn't buy this. I do have. I know I have this album on CD,
Uh-huh.
but for whatever reason, I had the singles "Cruiser" and I have
Oh,
"Since
the
You're Gone"
Cars.
and by the Cars. And that year they came out with "Shake It Up." Now I will say of their first four albums, I do like the album, but I would rank it fourth of those from their first four albums.
I would also rank it fourth.
Yeah, so I didn't like that one as much. Although "Since You're Gone" would probably be one of my top two or three favorite car songs. Okay, I got two more for you, just quickly. Canadian band Chilliwack
Yeah.
finally had a hit that year with "My Girl Gone Gone Gone." There's the single for that. And I also
Big
have the
hit
single
in
of "I
the
Believe."
big hit in the States too. Now let
Yeah,
me
I
ask,
remember that.
because you were in Canada, did they have that was that like their really big hit in Canada?
So they have another song that's I would say is a little, which is I think is a better song. It's called
Mhm.
"Fly at Night." So it would have been released around 1976 or 77. Now, from what I can tell, it charted, but I consider that to be a better song than "My Girl Gone Gone Gone."
Okay.
So they are another one. This band has been around since the late 60s. So I got one more fun little song there that I really liked from that year. I don't know if you're gonna know this one or not. It was
Maybe.
a song by a guy called Phil Seymour,
Phil
and
Seymour Power
he
Pop.
made like a 50
Yeah.
sounding song called "Precious to Me," and I used to really like this song.
I've got
I
that
remember he did that.
CD. I've
Oh,
got that
okay.
CD. Yeah, he was with Dwight Twilley. He was in Dwight Twilley's band. They were
Oh, okay.
yeah, Phil Seymour.
So,
He's dead now, may he rest in peace, but
oh, too bad.
he and Dwight, well, heck, Dwight Twilley's passed away too. Power pop greatness over there for those records. So, yeah, he carried that power pop flame with him when he broke off with Dwight Twilley. But yeah,
Okay. I,
1980.
I just remember that one song, and I remember I used to like to play that song. It used to get played on Shom FM in Montreal, which was kind of interesting because it doesn't sound like a rock song at all to me. It sounds like something from like I said, like sounds like a 50s type thing. But it's
Mhm.
I quite like it though, so still like it.
Awesome.
Never
God
hear that
darn.
anymore. Yeah, there's some
No,
fun.
you'll never hear it. Makes me
There's a
want
bunch
to
of
break
fun ones for you.
makes me want to break that back out. But yeah, 1981, ladies and gentlemen. All of our examples. Holy crap.
What a
You
year.
cannot, what a year
Yeah.
1981 was.
We could almost do another show on them because
We could do
there's more stuff. Rolling Stones had a good album that year, The Tattoo You. So there you
there's,
go.
like I said,
Yeah.
I could have kept going, Dave.
Oh.
I had to stop somewhere, but there was tons of stuff. Oh, what a good year. Great topic. All right, ladies and gentlemen, there you go. We wrapped up our show in 1981, one of the last great years of rock and roll. Of course, there was some other great stuff afterwards, but you cannot deny that 81 wasn't a good year. I want to thank Dave Lubin for coming on and chatting. It's been a long time coming. Haven't had Dave on the show quite a while, but he's back, and you'll see Dave on this channel more. We'll be doing some more things. Thanks for coming on. Hey, please like and subscribe. If you haven't and you're new to the channel, please like and subscribe. Tons of stuff down below. Always check us out on the Contrarians. On Wednesdays, we do a live chat every Wednesday for the most part at 7 p.m. Eastern. A lot of great content over there in the Contrarians, so check that out. Dave, is there anything you want to mention? Is there anything coming up for you? Or
Still, I am planning to have something out by the summer, so we'll hopefully have a show by then.
Awesome.
Hopefully the next time I come on this show, I'll have something going on.
Excellent. So look forward to that. A lot coming up, ladies and gentlemen. So, and Dave, once he gets things going, there'll be a lot of great content on his channel. All right, Dave, thanks for doing this, and we will see you on the next one.